thank you all for this opportunity to share. And we are going to go in depth into this most popular of sutras. And I will go through it slowly so that we can understand it and benefit from it. You have to realize that in going through the Heart Sutra, we will literally be going through the entire spectrum of the Buddha Dharma. And as I said, we will have a little break in between, and I will try to go through slowly, and hopefully all of us will benefit. Now, it's called Prajna Paramita Hidaya in Sanskrit, and Xing Jing is probably the most popular name, and of course in English, the Heart Sutra. But there are many, many myths which surrounds this sutra, and I would like to also go through that. Now, I'm approaching the Heart Sutra from a completely non-sectarian manner. We will just, or rather, I will just look at it as Buddha Dharma. And this very popular Heart Sutra, or Xing Jing, the version that we are using today, is actually edited by the Venerable Xuanzang. Now, most of us are familiar with the Venerable Xuanzang of the Siyuji fame, but there was a book that was written in the Ming Dynasty as a novel, almost 1,000 years or more after the actual person had lived. Now, Venerable Xuanzang did amazing amount of work in translation, but his greatest contribution to the Buddha Sasana was actually in editing the Heart Sutra. And you will realize I use the word edit rather than translate, and I will explain into it later on. Now, the Heart Sutra in Chinese has only 260 Chinese characters. And in these 260 Chinese characters, it collates the Buddha's teachings on how to be enlightened, how to be awakened, covering a wide spectrum from insight meditation to the khandhas, to the concept of non-self, dependent origination, Four Noble Truths, emptiness, and finally, how to be fully liberated. Prajna Paramita Hidaya cannot be translated into Chinese. And Xuanzang had strict guidelines in his translation work. And one of those guidelines is that if something cannot be precisely translated, then it should remain untranslated, but transliterated, leaving it to future generations to figure out its meaning. So Prajna Paramita become Poro Mi To Sing. The heart here doesn't refer to the physical heart, not to this physical heart beating, but it refers to the core or the innermost aspect of the perfection, which is paramita, or wisdom, prajna. Prajna means wisdom, panya in Pali, and paramita means perfect or supreme. So as you know, those of you who have studied some Pali, the language structure in Pali and Sanskrit is like Malay. It goes the other way around. So Prajna Paramita Hidaya is the heart of perfect wisdom, the opposite way. Sing, of course, in Chinese also refers to our mind, how we think. And here, Prajna Paramita refers to the perfect way of seeing the nature of reality. Now, not many people are aware that there are no Sanskrit manuscripts which titles what we today call Xing Jing as a sutra. Not even the early Chinese translations. They were all titled as Dharani or Zhouyi or Zhoujing. And a Dharani is like a mnemonic device to help memorization. And hence it cannot be too long. And the Venerable Xuanzang appears to be the first person, after he edited it, to actually call this text a sutra, a jing. Before this, it was not known as a sutra. So myth number one, if someone is to say, oh, you are studying a Mahayana sutra, that is actually wrong, because Xing is not even a sutra. That's why it does not have the beginning and the end that is typical of all sutras. Now, Xuanzang was a historical person. He's born, we are not too sure of the exact year. Some sources say 596, some sources say 602, some say 600, year of the Common Era. But he was a historical figure, and he became very famous because of his 17 years overland journey to India. Some of you in this audience itself had been on journeys tracing where he went. After spending so many years in India studying, he brought back 657 Sanskrit texts. And his personal interest is actually in meditation. And he was very interested in the Yogacara, or the consciousness-only school of Buddhism. The Journey to the West Sea Yu Ji, on the other hand, is a Chinese novel written more than 1,000 years after the historical figure in the Ming Dynasty, and it was roughly based on Xuanzang's journey, but it added many, many mythical elements that made it an interesting novel, and in fact, it's considered one of the 4 great novels of China. But it is also very interesting because the author of the novel incorporated Buddhist concepts. Sun Wukong, for example, whom you and I probably know from childhood as that monkey, actually represents anger, restlessness in the mind of Xuanzang. While Zhu Bajie, the big fat lazy fellow who was very lustful, lecherous, represents our greed, our lust. And Sa Jing or Sa Wu Jing represents ignorance, delusion. So they can be used as metaphors in teaching, because these, although in this novel were put as characters, could actually just represent our defilements. Now, in his youth, Xuanzang obtained a Chinese version of what is now called the Mahaprajna Paramita Great Enlightening Dharani. He got it in Sichuan from an elderly monk. And this was considered the primordial heart sutra. But it was not even called a sutra, as I said. It's actually a dharani, a mnemonic device. And it is very likely an extract from Kumarajiva, who lived in the 400s, translation of the large Prajna Paramita Sutras, which are more than 500 chapters. So this primordial, at that time would be considered a very early version, had sections which are completely similar to Kumarajiva's work in translating the large Prajna Paramita Sutra. And so because of this, it was assumed that Kumarajiva translated this early version. Nowadays it's debatable. They think it's likely not Kumarajiva, but someone else who extracted it from Kumarajiva's work. And that text itself, that primordial text, helped Xuanzang overcome his many, many mental difficulties as he was journeying towards the west, crossing deserts, mountains, blizzards, etc. Until the very end, this remained one of his favorite texts. Apparently, even on his deathbed, he was reciting this Xing Jing. Now, as Xuanzang was very well versed with the Prajna Paramita corpus, he himself translated, after checking 3 different versions of the Prajna Paramita text, he himself translated one single one. So he was kind of an expert in the Prashna Paramita text. He made some corrections to this primordial short text, significantly changing the beginning and adding a closing line. And in this process, he created the most popular and probably the most important Buddhist text of the Northern tradition, chanted by millions for the last 1,000 over years. Now, for us, it is important to know that Xuanzang was firstly a meditator. He went to India seeking answers to questions with regards to the Yogacara school. And secondly, Xuanzang is unique in that he was educated in both the Southern and Northern traditions. Now, the earliest extant text of Xuanzang's Heart Sutra is a stone stele, carved in stone, literally, dated 661 CE, 3 years before Xuanzang passed away. And this is near to Beijing. Now, the Heart Sutra is a map. It's brilliantly structured to apply the Buddha's teachings to guide us in our practice. It is not words taken verbatim from the Buddha. It is a summary of the entire Dhamma, covering both the Northern and Southern traditions. And it's a highly condensed contemplation guide. Its aim is to generate insights to shatter our strongest and most beloved delusions. And oftentimes, a single Chinese character would represent an entire teaching. Hence, first, to understand it will require basic knowledge of the Dhamma. And second, once you translate it into another language, it loses much of its essence. There is also much within these 260 words which actually challenges your understanding of the Dhamma. And this is what I hope to be able to do in the following 2 hours. So I've asked you all to print it out because I think you will need it as I go along, because I don't want you to get lost. Now, if there is any person who is reading the Heart Sutra for the first time, it sounds absolutely crazy because it just keeps on saying, no, no, no. If one is trained in Buddhism, it sounds even crazier because it appears to negate everything that you have learned. But all these are for a purpose, as you will see. They are all designed for a purpose. I have broken it into 8 sections, the English translation here, and I also hope you had printed it out, because each section deals with a different aspect of the Dhamma, literally guiding us, helping us to break our delusions. For example, you begin by insight meditation, looking within to see the emptiness of the self, and then you go step by step into phenomena, into concepts, and then applying it, the next 4, how to apply that in our daily lives so that you can be awakened and so that you can live without suffering. I will go through all this literally character by character. But before we begin, please drink your cup of tea, empty it so that it may be filled. This is an important teaching because if you come with a lot of preconceived ideas, then it is going to be very hard to share this. So please drink your tea now, empty your cup so that it may be filled. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the Heart Sutra in Chinese. And we have to keep on referring to it because words there are so important. But the first 3 words itself is crucial. As I told you, Xuanzang altered the beginning of that primordial text. And in altering the beginning, he literally redirected the entire focus of these 260 words. The first three characters say 观自在, 观自在. 观 is to observe mindfully. I understand most of you are from KL, so you'll probably be speaking Cantonese. In JB, everybody speaks Mandarin. In KL, you will speak in Cantonese. Guan in Cantonese is Gun. So if you chant the Heart Sutra in Cantonese, is Gun Ji Joy. To observe, to contemplate. So what do you contemplate? If I were to ask Sister Lena, can you contemplate? Her question is contemplate what? And here is to contemplate 自己, yourself, 自己. Look into your own mind. 在, 现在, now. Look into your own mind at every moment as you cultivate this path of the Buddha Dharma. 观自在. So right mindfulness in every moment is needed in our pursuit of truth and perfect wisdom. And as I said, Xuan Zhang's brilliance is evident in his choice of words. Because in walking the path, the understanding of the Dhamma is not theoretical. That is only the background. It must be direct observation of our seeing, the mind. 观自在. The second and third characters in combination, 自在, 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 means unbounded, 自在, a state of ease, freedom, happiness. You're freed. You're no longer bounded by human and divine bondages. 自在. And the first three characters, if you take it in context of 观自在, in Chinese, it represents Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which again will shock many of you here, because your first question will be, why is it not 观世音? Why is it 观自在? Well, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, whether you call by 观自在 or 观世音, is the embodiment of compassion. Cultivation cannot be just one way. Cultivation includes living life with loving kindness and compassion. So you can see the very first three characters itself teaches so much. Now, Xuan Zhang disagreed with the earlier translations of Avalokiteshvara as 观世音. He disagreed. He translated L-O-K in Avalok as looking, not listening. He did not want this 观世音 to be in here, and so he changed it to 观自在. And in this context, in the Heart Sutra, 观自在 used here refers to looking at the ultimate nature of things. You are looking into yourself, into your own mind, to see the ultimate nature of things. Now, very often you will see images like that, either in painting, in sculpture. This I took when I visited the Asian Museum in Singapore, and I thought it was really very nice because it really depicts a person who is in a 自在, 自在 posture. This is called 自在观音像. And it is a very iconic 自在 image because it illustrates the state of ease, freedom, and happiness, boundlessness. Now you will know what I mean when I say I need 2 hours to share this sutta in depth, because the first three characters have already taken us 15 minutes. But you need to understand this. A sister in Indonesia wrote to me that she has been chanting the Heart Sutra for years and years, and did not realize Guan Zizai meant looking into your mind now. Now, in the Chinese agamas, which are the equivalent of the Pali Canon, the Nikayas, Zizai, when associated with Buddhist monks or the Buddha, invariably means freedom, emancipation, and the other shore. In that context, it has only one meaning: emancipation, freedom, unbound. The late Venerable would say, the late Chief Venerable would say, freed from human and divine bondages. As I said, words that cannot be translated will not be translated. Bodhisattva is another word which cannot be translated. And so it is transliterated Bo as Pu, Sattva as Sa. And so you have the word Pu Sa. Bodhi, of course, means enlightenment. Sattva means the being who is intent on achieving enlightenment. So Pu Sa is Sister Jennifer, the being who is intent on achieving enlightenment. All right. So the Dhamma shows us the way, but we need to apply these teachings so that our body, speech, and mind is in line with the Buddha Dhamma. Hence, you will see Guan Zizai Pusa Xing Shen Bo Re Bo Lo Mi To Shi. Xing Shen. Xing Shen means Xing in Cantonese, Hang, walk. Shen, some, profound, deep. Sister Jennifer, you don't need to take a photograph. I'm giving you the whole set of notes. You have the whole set of notes, so you don't have to take a photograph. Xing Shen Hang, walk, literally walk. Shen Lu, deep, profound. So it is only when we walk deeply, profoundly, living these teachings, then you will walk this way. And what are you trying to walk? Go back again to the first line. Xing Shen Bo Ro Bo Lo Mi To Shi. When you are walking the path of perfect wisdom, when you walk this path of perfect wisdom deeply, what will you see when you look yourself? Zhao Jian Wu Yin Jie Kong. You will see Wu Yin is the 5 khandas, the 5 aggregates. All right, again, this would require basic knowledge of the Dhamma, but I will explain it. Zhao Jian Wu Yin Jie Kong. You will see that your 5 khandas is empty. Zhao Jian, clearly see, illuminate. Wu Yin, this is the 5 khandas. Jie Kong, that your 5 khandas are empty. What do we mean by 5 khandas? The 5 khandas, Wu Yin, is what we perceive as us. In English, the ego, the I. To Sister Jennifer, she is very real. Her husband is very real. Everything is very real, very solid, seamless. So we don't think that it is something which is empty. But when you contemplate very deeply, you will see that the 5 khandas, what we perceive as I, as the ego, is empty of anything solid. Now the self or the ego is not an inherent, concrete, or absolute entity, but a temporary composite of matter and energy. In fact, this is the lion's roar of the sutra, that you must see the emptiness of the self. This will shatter your strongest delusion. Our most beloved attachment is to this self. Even when we die, we don't want to let go of this self. And it is only when you can see the emptiness of this self, then you can transform your suffering. Now, if there is just one line you need to memorize to help you walk this path, it is actually the very first line of the Heart Sutra. 观自在菩萨行深般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空。Because this one line helps you overcome all your pain and suffering. This is the lion's roar. This is the very, very fundamental of our Buddha Dharma. Now, the self or zi is an image that is created by our senses. The Buddha called it the five aggregates, the way we perceive. In Pali, you would have learned rupa nama. I prefer to call it rupa nama than nama rupa, and you will know what I mean as I go on. We are actually just processes which are ceaselessly in motion. But in our innocence, in our deluded view, we think we are a solid, independent entity, and we call it I. Now, if our eyes can see beyond ultraviolet and below infrared, then certainly Brother Joseph will not look like Brother Joseph. Brother Joseph will look probably something like this picture. But because I cannot see infrared and I cannot see ultraviolet, I can only see a very narrow spectrum, and I will see Sister Lena as what Sister Lena looks like. But if I had to use an infrared camera and look at Sister Lena, she will look something like that. Energy. Now, the five khandhas is what we use to perceive. Now, there's a myth. People think that when the Buddha talk about rupa nama or nama rupa, people separate the mind and the body into two different things. No, you can't separate the mind and the body into two different things, because the mind is an activity of the body. If I had to ask my primary school classmate Wing Sun, can you point to your mind, Wing Sun? You can't point to your mind. Point here? No, that's your brain, that's your head, that's your skull. You can't point to your mind, because the mind is an activity, not an entity. So the Buddha taught us how it functions. And so the form in Bahasa, rupa. And when you look at anything, when Sister Lena looks at me, she sees a rupa, and immediately the mind will work very rapidly. There is sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. This the Buddha teaches us as the four components of how our mind perceive, construct, and label, and gives it a nama. So what is a nama? Those of you who are able to speak Malay are so lucky, because Pali, Sanskrit, Malay have many, many words in common. A nama is literally a name. So the Sister Lena will name this image Dr. Wong. And in that sense, her perception of that form has been given an identity, a nama, a name. And now Sister Lena has created separateness. That means Dr. Wong is there, I'm here. What in psychiatry is called plurality. That means now you see things as separate. That is anatomically the function of our left lobe. If I were to remove Sister Lena's left lobe in her brain, she wouldn't perceive things like that. She won't see it as separate. So in Buddhism, this ego or I is a delusion of an independent self. Now, in the culture and belief of the Buddhist time, they think that there is such a thing called an Atman. And this Atman is thought to be a permanent I for all time, which goes from body to body to body to body to body, indestructible and eternal. Now, that belief is still held strongly by many people even today. But the Buddha saw that there is no such permanent substance within this that you call an I. The Buddha could only see ceaseless change and transformation. Hence, the Buddha gave the teaching of anatman, the opposite with the word an added. In Pali, anatman is anatta, a word that you might be more familiar with. We are gushing streams of energy, like the picture of a river that I show you, and it is ceaselessly changing. Complexes of activities of body and mind, always in motion, always transforming from one state to another. Those that were before us extend back into the midst of time. And when we die, you will become those after you. From one arises another. What do I mean? You are literally going to be recycled. When you die, you're going to be recycled. Every atom, every amino acid, every carbon molecule. You're going to be recycled from life to life. From one arises another. So you are not the same, yet you are related, because the next comes from now. The old identity is gone, habis, but a new identity arises. And Lego is actually a very useful way to teach this that the Buddha taught. When you take apart a Lego house and mix the pieces back in the bin, where does the house go? The child says, it's in the bin. The adult says, no, those are just pieces. They could now be reassembled into spaceships or train. The house was an arrangement. That arrangement doesn't stay with the pieces. It doesn't go anywhere else. It is gone. So when I die, I will be recycled into another form. If I've been a good person, good karma, hopefully with good vipaka, I will be recycled into favorable conditions. But what is Dr. Wong will be gone. So if I'm a very bad person and I become a street dog, that street dog is not Dr. Wong. That street dog is a dog. Dr. Wong is gone. But that street dog came about because of Dr. Wong. Get it, Lina? You are literally recycled. So you are Kong. You are like a Lego man, or you're like an empty pail. Emptiness, Kong, describes the corelessness of all things. There is an external appearance that I know, Lina, that I know, Li Ming, but that is always changing. If you do not believe me, Sister Lina, take a look at your photograph when you are 20 years old. It's always changing. So the 5 khandas, or the 5 aggregates, are empty, because what is seen or perceived by us as a solid entity that we label as self has actually no innate, unchanging substance, no permanence. It's always changing. No inherent or independent, eternal existence. Everything is produced from causes and is connected to and conditioned by everything else in a complex web of cause and effect. Nothing exists independently in an unchanging state. Now, we learn in the first noble truth. In the first noble truth, suffering, dis-ease, disappointment, dissatisfaction, which we call dukkha, is present whenever you have clinging. You cannot cling to what is impermanent, unstable, unreliable, always changing, and non-self. Material and sensual happiness, because of all these characteristics, is fleeting. Now, the Buddha summarized dukkha in the first noble truth by saying pancha upadana khanda dukkha. The 5 clinging aggregates is suffering. As long as we cling, you are going to suffer. And the Buddha similarly compared form to a lump of foam, feeling to bubble, perception to mirage, mental formation to a banana trunk, consciousness to an illusion. and ask, what essence could there be in this? So if you can understand this very first part of the sutta, seeing the emptiness of the self, seeing the emptiness of you, your son, your wife, your parents, seeing its non-self characteristic, then it will help you to transform your suffering. 度一切苦厄. So Wing Sun is my classmate from primary school. We have been friends for 40, 50 years. Wing Sun, do not expect your son-in-law to be as good a son-in-law as you are, because your son-in-law is not you. Your son-in-law was raised in a different time, different culture, different education. He is not you. He is a composite of a different era. So he cannot be you. So if you cling into that concept that my son-in-law must be like this, like how I was as a son-in-law to my mother-in-law, then you're going to suffer. And your daughter is going to suffer. And every one of us is going to suffer. A concept also has to be let go of. So if you can first understand the very first part of the sutta, that the self is empty of anything permanent. Similarly, Wing Sun is empty of anything permanent. I am empty of anything permanent. We are all the time changing. Then you can transform your suffering and distress. The second noble truth teaches us that the cause of our suffering is craving. And craving is an emotion, an emotional state of wanting things, be it sensual pleasure, be it eternity and permanence. I put 3 dots there because that's very important. To see the causes of suffering, you must see first the emptiness of yourself, the nama rupa, obtaining insightful understanding of the 3 characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Now, many of us are of the age where we are all vaga emas. When you are vaga emas, you will have all kinds of illnesses. Do not blame your body. Do not blame your coronaries. Do not blame your prostate. What do you expect? It is impermanent. It is anicca. It is dukkha. And most importantly, it is non-self. You can't control it. It doesn't belong to you. Then you will realize the futility of craving, clinging, and greed. Hence, when you can let go, 度一切苦厄. So this brings me back to the very first part, this first line, which we have just shared. If you can look within and see the emptiness of yourself, the emptiness of your nama rupa, the emptiness of all that is surrounding you, your life, your wife, your lover, your friend, your brother, your sister, then you can let go and transform suffering and distress. We had covered part 1. So if there's one lesson to bring home, that very first line, 观自在菩萨行胜般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄. This is the very foundation, the lion's roar of the sutra. Now I mentioned about this, eternity and permanence. In the second noble truth, you have kama tanha. I want sensual pleasures. I want to enjoy. Then you have bhava tanha. Oh, it's something good. I want it to carry on forever. I want it to go on forever. Eternity. I want eternity in heaven, an eternity or whatever. And then you go, with bhava tanha. No, I don't want it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. So eternity and permanence is something under bhava tanha, which we all crave for. And this was something the Buddha spoke very strongly on. This tale of eternal life in heaven is so quite blatantly. And it's a serious error which the Buddha had condemned unequivocally. In Majjhima Nikaya 22, the Buddha said, but self and what belongs to a self are not acknowledged as a genuine fact. This being so, is not the following a totally foolish teaching? And this is still being taught today. The self and the cosmos are one and the same. After death, I will be permanent, everlasting, eternal, imperishable, and will last forever and ever. This is being sold every day by people to you. And the Buddha said, is this not a totally foolish teaching? And the monks replied, what else could it be, sir? It's a totally foolish teaching. Because if you are to contemplate, look rationally, it is anything but this. Understanding emptiness, which is sunyata. Sunya is the adjective and the word anatta. Emptiness, sunyata, includes all the three universal characteristics: anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Sunyata is all-encompassing view of this ultimate truth. In Chinese, we call it san fa yin. While anatta, non-self, is one aspect of this reality. All right? Now we go on to the second part. So if you refer to your notes, this is the second part, the next step in the teaching. So your first step in teaching is learning to see the emptiness of yourself through self-reflection, through looking into your mind, through looking very clearly, and seeing the emptiness of the five khandhas. Then the next part, the next section, O Sariputta, you know Sariputta is the chief disciple. 舍利子，色不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空即是色。In English, the rupa, form, is no other than emptiness. Emptiness, no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. This is probably the most popular and the most enigmatic line in this Heart Sutra. Many people will quote this when you say Heart Sutra. All 色不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空即是色. Form here, rupa, rupam or rupa. Form is no other than emptiness. That means form and emptiness are exactly the same. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Emptiness is exactly form. This second part is a very important teaching because the Dhamma that is being taught to you does not want you to go to the other extreme. Form, we just discussed, is the first, the rupa. And this includes not only internally, but externally, everything that you see, from my table to my computer. And all form is empty, like a drum with no solid core. Constantly changing. What we see, what we perceive as permanent, it is not. It is not solid, it is not independent, it is not unchanging. So do not be surprised, Sister Lina, when your computer breaks down, when your computer gets a virus, when your software gets corrupted, because your computer is nothing solid, it's not independent, and it is not unchanging. With this knowledge of reality, the form that you perceive, that we see, exists as a temporary composite object. Lina's computer still exists. So form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. So emptiness does not mean nothingness. Let me give you another example. A watch. A watch is empty of an inherent self. For within the aggregates of springs and gears, there's nothing in there which is a watch. But the combination of all this makes a watch that has a function that tells time. Our body and mind composite, rupa nama, is also the same. That's why the next line of the sutra says, 受想行识认识你的事受想行识亦复如是 sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness 认识你, I recognize you. It's exactly like this. So the four aggregates of how the mind construct and label, giving things a nama, a name or identity. This is similarly empty of any concrete existence. So it is not only the form, not only the rupam, which is empty, but also the nama, what we label. That's also empty of any permanent concrete existence. So we function in an ephemeral environment, is always changing. All things are indeed real. Yes, Sister Lina's computer is of course real. It is just not in the way she thinks it is. Sister Lina expects her computer to last eternally. She expects the computer to always behave, never get corrupted, always function as she wants it. But the reality is otherwise, because it doesn't have any solid core. So the concept of nihilism, that things do not exist and that nothing continues after death, and the concept of eternalism, that there is existence in objects that will exist unchangingly forever, they are both clearly rejected in the Buddha's teachings. And in the Heart Sutra, this is in this line. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. Lina, do you understand so far? Because I can only see a few people, so I can only see their reaction. Maybe Wing Sun, you should on your video so that I can see your reaction. All right. So far, Lina and Jennifer's video are on, that's why I can see their reaction. So please, this is to, it tells us this teaching. 是诸法空相，诸法 everything, everything, 诸法 everything. Me and you and a dog named Boo, from the computer to your book to your house to your car, everything is 空相. 相 is lakkhana. That means all of it is characterized by emptiness. That is empty of an unchanging nature. And knowing that all phenomena is empty of an unchanging nature, now you have insight into the changing nature of everything. And you will reach a very important part of this sutra, which teaches us 不生不灭,不垢不净,不增不减. And this, Wing Sun being a teacher of many years in chemistry, can tell you that this is fundamental science. Nothing in reality is created or destroyed, is defiled or pure. Nothing is added or lost. 不生不灭,不垢不净,不增不减. And this is sixth form physics. Nothing is created, nothing is destroyed. It is merely transformed from one state to another in an ever-flowing flux. The selflessness and the beginningless nature of all things. Clear? Now I come to this very important word, because in the next part of this Heart Sutra, this word wu starts to come in. In Japanese, it's mu. So you will often hear mu. In Chinese, wu. Now understanding this word is crucial. This word commonly we understand as no, non, or none, wu. But in the Heart Sutra, it very importantly conveys the teaching of no grasping, clinging, or attachment. We function like a mirror. You receive, you relinquish all that goes in front of it without grasping or clinging. We function calmly, joyfully, full-heartedly doing our best. We transcend the pleasant, unpleasant dichotomy and the futile efforts of resisting the monsters and holding on to the angels. And I'm going to show you something that is hardly ever taught. And that is this. The origin of the word wu is this. And it's a pictogram of a man or a woman holding a lot of things in both hands. This is, of course, lost in the modern simplified version. Now, ironically, the word Wu in the Heart Sutra teaches the opposite, not to hold on to, not to grasp, or to be attached. Dr. Quack, it doesn't mean not to have things. It means, yes, Dr. Quack, you can have things, but you do not hold on to them, you do not grasp onto them, you have to let it go. So Wing Sun, you have to let go of your daughter, whom you haven't seen for 9 months. You have to learn to let it go, or you will both suffer. Do not grasp onto them, because all things are empty. We cannot control it. The character for Kong, emptiness, its origin is a sky without clouds. So this is closer to describing the emptiness of a cup rather than a void. It is not nothing, but empty of any substance. Now this Wu is so important, I will have to repeat what I just said here again. You have a girl, a child holding on to many things. That was the original word. Now in this teaching is not to hold on to things, not to grasp or be attached. Please remember this, very, very important, or you will not understand this sutra. If you look at your notes on the sutra, you will see the next line talks about, I better go back and repeat. Yeah. Therefore, in emptiness, there is no form. Very important line. 舍利子是处法空相，不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减。是故空中无色，无受想行识。Therefore, in emptiness. So, with understanding now what we just shared on emptiness, 是故空中, therefore in emptiness, there is no form, no sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. 是故空中无色，无受想行识。There, when you understand emptiness, you will understand that the 5 khandhas are empty. There are no coordinates by which you can define selfhood, as these psychophysical activities that you see as self are constantly changing. At the end of these 2 hours, if Brother Joseph understood what I said, his thinking will be completely different. He's a different man. He's no longer same as the Brother Joseph 2 hours ago. The word Wu, do not grasp or cling onto the 5 khandhas or what you perceive as yourself, or you will suffer. All right? Accept it, use it, treat it, but do not cling. You have to let go. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, wu yan, pi, se, sen yi, no eye, no tongue, no body, no yan, 眼睛, 耳朵, 鼻子, 舌, 身, 意, mind. Your sense organs, in Buddhism, the mind is a 6th sense organ. They provide you information. But what happens is, reality we see distorted by our senses and we become deluded. But truth will be delusions now seen as what it truly is. And so these that you perceive, the eye will perceive form, ear will perceive sound, etc. 无色声香味触法. No form, sound, smell, taste, object of touch, and object of thought. All these are empty. All our grasping, attachment, and aversions is generated and developed by the activities of our senses. The teaching here, Wu, tells you, use them, but do not grasp onto them. The 6 perceived objects of form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought by our 6 senses, they are impermanent and unreliably distorted by our wishes, fears, and opinions. Look at this, a snake. No, it's a rope. But we will perceive it as a snake because that is what we fear. Even our objects of thoughts are just passing images and not I. It is not I think, therefore I am. This merely arises because of a cause. Now, Brother Whaley may say, hold on, my body clearly exists. I clearly have an eye, a ear, a nose. What is this teaching saying? With the realization of emptiness, your eye, ear, nose, etc. exist, but they do not exist in the way you conceive of it. No eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. These are just names. What do we mean by just a name? Can your eye exist by itself? If I were to take Brother Whaley's eye out, put it on the table, can that eye exist by itself and function? Can any of the others? No, none. Not a single one of them can function independently. They can only function as part of a whole. Hence, they are empty of any innate existence. And while it exists, it is by itself not a functional, independent entity. Once you separate it, it's gone. So therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无眼界乃至无疑世界, this is a summary. 眼界, the realm of sight. 疑世界, the realm of your consciousness. And this covers the 6 consciousness of eye, ear, nose, tongue, touch, and mind consciousness. It's telling you all these 6 things that we perceive, the 6 realms of whether we see, we hear, we taste, we touch. First, they are empty. They are not permanent. They are always changing. They are unreliable. They are unstable. And second, you should not take refuge in them. You should not hold on to them as I, my, or mine, or you will suffer. Ooh. You will realize, those of you who are smart, you will realize that I had just discussed the 18 dhatus. 6 sense organs, 6 sense objects, and the 6 sense consciousness. That is the 18 dhatus. That is how we perceive. You have your 5 khandhas, how our mind function, consciousness, perception, formation, sensation with the rupa, the body, this being a function of the bodily organ. Then you have the 6 cognitive objects, what you see, what you hear, what you smell, etc. Your eye sees this, your ears hears that, the 6 faculties, and the 6 consciousness, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, etc. This is called the 18 dhatus. All of them are empty. They are not permanent, they are unstable, they are changing, they are unreliable. They do not have any concrete nature. And so please do not grasp onto it or attach onto it, or you will suffer because they are unstable and unreliable. Now, this is how we perceive. All right, you see a dog. And very quickly, the mind will go through this process of cognition. We see a dog, we smell a dog, we hear a dog, etc. We recognize it. And very quickly, as we say just now, we will have a concept. We give it a name, a nama, a dog. And we have now created separation, duality, plurality. So there are 3 parts of our mental experience. You have your vijnana, our perception. You have your mano, our cognitive process. And we have chitta, our emotional reaction to it. For those who do not know, they grasp. Any one of us who do not know the teachings I just shared, you grasp onto what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch. You want it. You want it to be permanent. So the Buddha said, take an uneducated, ordinary person who has not seen the noble ones as is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They have not seen good persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of good person. Then they will consider form, feeling, perception, choices, whatever seen, heard, thought, known, sought, explored by the mind as, this is mine. I am this. This is myself. They will grasp onto it. In the Heart Sutra, it tells you, do not grasp onto the 18 dhatus. Do not grasp onto the 5 khandhas, or you will suffer. But an educated, noble disciple will do the opposite. He will see the form and he will say, this is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. Similarly, for feeling, perception, etc., this is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. So those who know, they do not grasp. They have learned this teaching. Clear? So when we see and understand the truth of emptiness, the result is the transformation of the way we think. You awaken to reality. There will still be pain. Your body will still age. Your back will still give you pain. Your boss will still give you distress, but it will lessen because you know. You know how to deal with it. You learn not to be taken in by the appearance of things, and freedom from suffering comes from not clinging to an ever-changing, slippery object and relying on it as a source of happiness. So emptiness as a quality of phenomena means you cannot see anything as concrete and as yourself. Emptiness as a mental state means when you look, you do not add onto what you look. In the Bahia Sutta, it is said, in what is seen, only the seen. What is heard, only the heard. And what is cognized, only the cognized. And Bahia became enlightened on just listening to this one teaching of the Buddha in this one line, because he has learned how to perceive. So emptiness as a mode of perception will remove all that I, my, mine, like, dislike. So please know, emptiness is not a metaphysical view, but a strategic mode of acting and seeing the world that helps you have less pain. Now, all things are ever evolving and ever changing. We know that. Emptiness, which is conceptually liable to be mistaken for nothingness, and that you know is not true, is in fact the reservoir of infinite possibilities. Remember, I shared with great detail, it is not emptiness. It is just not something permanent, unchanging with a concrete core. In the Sunya Sutta, in the Pali Canon, Ananda asked, it is said that the world is empty. The world is empty, Lord. In what respect is the world empty? And the Buddha replied, insofar as it is empty of a self or anything pertaining to the self, that is why the world is empty. And here you will see the Buddha clearly describe it as both internal and external, not just within, but everything you see outside. And of course, in the Dhammapada, you have this line, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. Dhamma, when written in small d, means phenomena. All phenomena are non or not self. Now, look at this example. A candle that we offer all the time. Now, this candle says, I'm the fire. I am beautiful and bright. I'm great and powerful. I can give light, burn, or boil. Now, like the candle flame, we too often say this. I'm this, I'm that. Right? Now, you may laugh at the candle and say how stupid, how ridiculous. The candle is just a composite of many factors, just energy. There is no I inside the candle, nothing solid or eternal or unchanging. But we are exactly the same, like this candle. Nothing solid, eternal, or unchanging. We are just activities, just energy. No solid activity. Emptiness, Kong. No solid entity. We say, I am happy. We say, I am suffering. In reality, there is happiness. There is suffering. but there is no solid I. And we are just like that candle flame without the I. We are just energy, heat, combustion. They say when you die, you become cold. No more heat, no more combustion. So some people say that Buddhist practice is to dissolve the self. That is wrong. They do not understand. There is no self to be dissolved. There is only the notion of self to be transcended. And that is what I've spent 1 hour and 15 minutes trying to share. Now, you have the truth of change, which we have understood. Then you have the truth of becoming. Everything is always in the process of becoming into something else. I am becoming older by the second, by the hour. Nothing is, but it's becoming. Everything is always changing. And this is the emptiness of nature. It is always becoming something. This is impermanence, 无常, one of the first of the three universal characteristics. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, the next line, the next part of the sutta, therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无明以无明尽，乃至无老死以无老死尽。无明 is ignorance. 无明, don't understand. Ignorance, don't understand. 老死, old age and death. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, there is no ignorance. Now you know. And there's also no ending of ignorance up to no old age and death. I've just taught you. 不生不灭,不垢不净,不增不减. And also no ending of old age and death. And again, for those of you who know, this is the 12 links of dependent origination, starting with ignorance and ending with 老死, old age and death. In one line, it has summarized the entire 12-link dependent origination. So when enlightened to the truth, Sister Lina, there is no more ignorance. Sister Li-Ming now knows she's no more ignorant. And ultimately, because there's no permanent Sister Lina, no permanent Sister Li-Ming, there's no being even to be ignorant or to end ignorance. No one to age and die. And of course, dependent origination teaches us that each is dependent on the previous link. We are all interrelated to each other. Samyutta Nikaya 515, no death. One who regards the world in what way isn't seen by death's king. And the Buddha replied, always be mindful. Regard the world as empty, having removed my view in terms of self. Having removed any view in terms of self. This way one is above and beyond death. One who regards the world in this way isn't seen by death's door. Understand? 不生不灭,不垢不净,不增不减. In conventional language, there is birth, there is death. In ultimate reality, Sister Lina is recycled. There is no birth, no death, no Lina. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无苦集灭道. Again, those of you who are knowledgeable, this is the Four Noble Truths. 无苦集灭道. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, there is no suffering, no source of suffering, no annihilation, no path. Now, the Four Noble Truths tells us the nature of suffering, the cause of suffering, the path to end suffering, and to attain nirvana. Now, on reaching enlightenment, there is no more psychological suffering, stress, and greed. When the Buddha became enlightened at the age of 35, there is no more psychological suffering. With final nirvana, when the Buddha passed away at the age of 80, there is now no more physical suffering, as he is not going to be recycled into another physical form again. No more, the end of physical suffering. From the enlightened viewpoint, even the path is conceptual, for there is no unchanging entity that has walked the path. Sister Lina, who walked the path in Indonesia, is a completely different person from the Sister Lina who was working in Singapore, and a completely different person from the Sister Lina, who is in Johor Bahru now. If you don't believe me, Sister Jennifer, just take a look at your old photographs. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. Who is that person? Unrecognizable. Only a flux of activities. Now in the Visuddhimagga, you will see this line. If you understand this gatha, you understand what I'm trying to share with you so far. In the Visuddhimagga, for there is suffering, but none who suffers. No one. Because we tend to think of a permanent Sister Jennifer, a permanent Brother Joseph, a permanent Brother Whaley. But there is no permanent Whaley, no permanent Joseph, only activities. Doing exists, although there is no doer. The emptiness of self. Extinction is, but no extinguished person. So nirvana is, but no one who enters nirvana. Although there is a path, there is no goer. Because there's no permanent, concrete self that we always think exists. And this is our biggest delusion, the most difficult attachment and delusion to break. Now, the Buddha in Majjhima Nikaya 22 said, there are certain ascetics who accuse him that the ascetic Gautama is an exterminator. He advocates the annihilation, eradication, and obliteration of an existing being. They do not understand, and they falsely misrepresent the Buddha. This is exactly like what the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh said. People think that the Buddha is dissolving or destroying or getting rid of the self. They do not understand that in the very first place, there is no self to be dissolved. Only the notion of self to be transcended. This being so, if others abuse, attack, harass, and trouble the realized one, he doesn't get resentful, bitter, and emotionally exasperated. Or if others honor, respect, revere, and venerate him, he doesn't get thrilled, elated, and emotionally excited. This is going to come in the next part of the Heart Sutra. Maybe we will take a 3-minute break here, because now this next section deals with how do you apply that understanding of emptiness into your daily life now. And so I think that this is a good time for you to quickly run to the toilet or drink your cup of coffee. I'll see you in 3 minutes. Joseph, are we up in 3 minutes?
Yep, I think you can start.
Okay. I must try and see more people. You know, I'll keep on us talking about Lena and poor Sister Jennifer. A lot of people didn't switch on their videos. They don't want me to see them. Let me go and look at some people. All right, let's come back. Before we come to here, let's go back to the Sutra again. So we began by talking about this one line. And as I said, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, if there is one thing you bring home, bring this first part home. But you see, once you translate it to English, it completely loses its essence. So you need to either chant it in Japanese, Vietnamese, Korean, or Mandarin to get its essence. Because once you translate to English, it's gone. It doesn't have that meaning that Xuan Jiang was trying to teach us. 观自在菩萨行胜般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄. The very fundamental core of the teaching. Look into yourself. 观自己现在 every moment. Walk the path deeply into perfect wisdom. See clearly that what you consider as yourself is actually an empty phenomena. Not that you do not exist. You exist, but you are empty of anything permanent. You're always changing. And our mechanism of perception of arupa, which is described as the way we perceive the five khandhas, that is empty. It does not have a solid core. If you can understand that, it will help you transform suffering and distress. And I've used examples. People fall sick because their knee, Brother Jusing got a bad knee. He is very happy with it. He accepts it. It's anatta. We all of us here who are Vaga Emas have got diabetes, prostate problems, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's non-self. It's impermanent. What do you expect? So you can accept it. You deal with it to your best. You transform the suffering caused by taptiok, by attachment. You lessen your distress. So mindfully looking within to see the emptiness of the self is the very first. But do not go to the other extreme and knock yourself and say, I do not exist. Dr. Wang teach me I do not exist. No. Immediately the sutra tells you form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness no other than form. 色不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空就是色，受想行识，亦复如是. It immediately tells you, no, 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 don't go to the other extreme. You do exist, just that you are not permanent, concrete, unchanging. Both nihilism and eternalism is to be rejected. Clearly stated, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, emptiness exactly form. And it even goes on to teach you a fundamental principle of physics. Nothing is created nor destroyed. Energy, mass is merely transformed from one state to another. And when you can understand this, this is something I always share at funerals, because people think the person is gone, he's dead. But that is conventional. In ultimate reality, 不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减. You are merely recycled from one state to another, and depending on what you have done, that recycled aeroplane, train, whatever, will be the vipaka of your karma. Emptiness is not nothingness. Very, very important. Do not go away with that misconception. Then the next part deals with all that we perceive. Six sense base, six sense organ, six sense consciousness. So we look at your car. SK look at his car. Oh, beautiful BMW. He thinks it's a permanent car. He thinks it's going to give him lots of happiness. Then he realized BMW, instead of bringing more women, actually bring more worry, banyak makan wang, banyak masuk workshop. And he realized that BMW is not a permanent thing. It's very, very anicca. It's always breaking down, very anatta, no self, and very, very dukkha. And then he realized that, hey, not only am I, even the external things are also like that. Similarly, our sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness. Wow, I passed my exam. Wow, damn shock. But realize, brothers and sisters, that feeling only arose out of a very temporary condition. No eye, ear, nose, body, tongue, etc. All that you see are the 18 realms. 6 sense base, 6 sense object, 6 sense consciousness. Yes, they are there, of course. Enjoy them, use them, but do not be attached to them, because none of them have a permanent, unchanging nature. They will all change. And if you hold on to them as your source of happiness, you are going to be very, very disappointed. So all experience is empty of any concrete nature. Woo! Do not hold on to them. Enjoy them, let it go. No ignorance, no ending of ignorance. These are all concepts, all in our mind. Old age and death, I already explained. No ending of old age and death. No suffering, source of suffering, annihilation, path, wisdom, attainment. All these are concepts. And while they are true, they are empty of any solid existence. Now we'll go on to this next part. Okay. So breaking the myth of wisdom and attainment. So again, you must remember the first line at the top, the premise. 是故空中无色，无受想行识. So 是故空中. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, with understanding the impermanent, the non-self, the dukkha characteristic of things, if you understand that, then you understand 无知以无得, why there is no 知道 wisdom 以无得 attainment. No wisdom, no attainment. A brother wrote at least 2-3 times in the previous Breaking Myth session asking, what does this mean? Understanding the emptiness of self, there is no need to egoistically maintain pride. You are only a temporary composite that is eternally changing. There is no need to have any form of pride based on my attainment. I keep my precept. I walk the path. Notice the eyes. All that is ego. Now, probably about 15 years ago when I was sharing the Dhamma, there was one venerable who would now and then sit in and attend my talks. And he took out a piece of paper. And every time I used the word I, he would write it down on the piece of paper. And at the end of the talk, we were chit-chatting and he would tell me, you know, Dr. Wong, he said, do you know how many times in your sharing you use the word I? That taught me a very, very important lesson. Understanding the emptiness of self, or what need is there to egoistically maintain pride, position, attainment, higher level of wisdom and knowledge. All right? 无知以无得. With understanding emptiness, 无知以无得. Conceit fades. Now you do not even grasp onto whatever your achievements are. You do not grasp onto whatever wisdom that you think you have, knowledge that you think you have accumulated. When you really understand the emptiness of self, it is just a flowing river. There is no need to grasp, and with that, your conceit will naturally fade. Wu. Please understand that in the fetters of enlightenment, the 3 lower fetters of a sotapan, the Sakandagamin will weaken this. The Anagamin will eradicate first 5. And it is only the Arahant who was able to eradicate the higher 5, including conceit. All right, I hope you realize that. How do you eradicate conceit? You can only eradicate conceit when you understand this. Gratitude is and not conceit when you understand emptiness. The typical weakness of ingratitude is arrogance and egoism, when thinking that whatever you have done is achieved by your effort, a big I. But the wise person, the knowledgeable, realize that it is the efforts of many, many people, your parents, your teachers, your friends, and even apparently completely unrelated people. And they have all contributed to you achieving your goals. If not, you are not going to achieve that goal. You can be the most brilliant engineer on the face of this earth, but without your supporting staff, without the foreign worker, you're not going to achieve anything. So whatever you achieve is really the effort of a lot of people. And instead of feeling proud and conceited, you should feel humble and grateful, because you see the interconnectedness of your existence and the emptiness of your attainment. Now, these are the three aspects of anatta that I'm sure many of you here who have been studying the Buddha Dharma for a long time will know. The three aspects: this is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. So this is not mine. I am not happy, sad, angry, worried, and this is not myself. The three aspects of anatta. The Sotapan has only understood this. It takes an arahant to break through the next two. So are all the external objects as perceived by your senses ever truly yours? Wu, do not be attached to them. They exist, but you cannot not own them. So Wing Sun, you cannot own your son-in-law, neither can you own your daughter. Are all your thoughts, beliefs, emotions, likes and dislikes really yours? If you understand anatta, if you understand emptiness, do not be attached to them. And finally, of course, even at the level of the Sotapan, is this body yours? Is that prostate that is giving you problem something you can control? You can't. We deal with it, but we are not going to be attached to it so badly that you will result in pain, suffering. Who let it go. So even at whatever level that we are studying, the attitude of a beginner is ideal: eager, humble, ready to learn. Discard misconceptions, discard whatever background. Then you can accept all possibilities. And that's why I told you, empty your cup. If not, it's going to be very hard for me to share. Once you think you know, the possibilities are all blocked. For example, in looking inwards in meditation, we are not learning. We're actually unlearning and letting go. So we need to let go of attachments, including any grasping to attainment, results, and knowledge. I did this, I built that, I construct this, I own this. Even that grasping. 以无所得故，性无过碍. Having nothing to attain, there is no hindrance in the mind. 以无所得故，性无过碍. Having nothing to attain with no hindrance in the mind. When you come to a point in your life where you have no need to impress anybody, your freedom has truly begun. Now, any gain or attainment is just a passing thought, as ultimately there is no being to achieve anything. This frees you from the stress of the need to achieve. So you can act without thoughts of the person doing the work, nor the magnitude or the return of the work done. So the Gladians who are organizing this, they just do it. They do not think, what is my return in organizing this? Or what my Hong Kong students will say, 有咩着數先？冇着數冇做嘅. Unfortunately, that is the reality of today's life. But if you understand and you're a good person, you act without thoughts of the person doing, nor the magnitude or return of the work done. 无過愛故，無有恐怖. No hindrance, that's no fear. Be non-attached to results and let the result take care of itself. Summarizing the last few lines, whoever can see this, the emptiness of the self, the emptiness of phenomena, the emptiness of concepts, no longer need anything to attain, sees no obstacle in their mind, overcome all fear, destroy all wrong perception. He is free, 自在, happiness. So those who understand this, they do not rely on any mental impression of success or failure. They just do. They are free of the fears which can easily upset others, and they function effectively with metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, and wisdom, freed from any restrictions. Brother SK, do you know any such person? Sister New, do you know any such person? I'm sure you are aware of people who fit this description that I just gave, because there are such people in the world. Now, one of the brothers wrote to me, or is it a sister? I can't tell from the name, that if I understand all this and I achieve all this, will I not become like a stone? That means I got no reaction. I understand all empty. No. Do not be mistaken. What you learn as the divine dwellings, the Brahma Vihara, they are not emotional agitations. They are tranquil, restful states of mind. You can only have perfect metta, perfect karuna, perfect mudita, perfect upekkha in the absence of self-centered emotions, such as lust, hate, and delusion. Greed, hatred, delusion. It's only when you see the emptiness of self, then you can perfect this. So only those people who are freed from self-centered emotions, they experience genuine, selfless, universal benevolence of metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Emotions are based on the sense of self. They're self-centered and agitated states of mind. When your mind is purified of tan, chen, ci, greed, hatred, delusion, then you will develop the perfect Brahma Viharas of metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. So you're not going to be a stone. You're going to be a very, very kind, compassionate person. Again, Brother SK, Sister New, do you know of any person who is showing full metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha? I'm sure you do. Such people exist. The next line in the sutta goes, 远离颠倒梦想，就近涅槃。远离颠倒梦想，就近涅槃。远离晕累 to leave far behind all your delusions. Far behind the delusion of a permanent I, a permanent self, an eternal I, an eternal self, a concrete I. 颠倒, overturn. Turn upside down all your delusions, all your misconceptions. Wake up from your 梦想, your dream. All of us are living like a dream. You know, the word Buddha means the awakened one. So somebody who is awake, who understands the truth, a Buddha, an Arahant, is the awakened one. So that means all of us, from Sister Chong Sui Ping to Brother Swami Go to Dr. Lee, they are all asleep. We are all walking in a dream. Because if the Buddha and the Arahants and the enlightened ones are awake, that means all of us are walking in a dream. We are all walking in a delusion. Delusion of self, delusion of conceit, delusion of grandeur, delusion of a million things. And the sutta here tells you, wake up from your dream. 梦想. If you can achieve this, then you 就近涅槃. Now, Nibbana is not something far away. Nibbana is not something after you die. The instant you awake from the dream, you are already in Nibbana. You are already in Nibbana. The Buddha attained Nibbana at the age of 35. Psychological Nibbana, freedom from pain, suffering, greed, anger. When he died at the age of 80, he had Pari Nibbana. That's why we call it Pari Nibbana, again Nibbana, because now his body is not going to be recycled into another form anymore. No more physical pain. So I hope you understand this line. 远离颠倒梦想，就近涅槃. So brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, all my good Dhamma family here, do not strive for Nibbana. Please, do not strive for Nibbana. Strive for the end of greed, anger, hatred, delusion, ignorance. Strive for the end of this. Because when you strive for the end of greed, anger, hatred, sorrow, delusion, and ignorance, what results is Nibbana. All right, so do not strive for an unknown happiness. Eradicate a known unhappiness. All right. Now, this is taken from the Anguttara Nikaya 3.32, where the Venerable Ananda was talking to the Buddha, that is it possible that you can have such a state? Ananda is in doubt. Is it even possible that there can be someone with no ego, no possessiveness, no conceit, nothing, no conceit? They attain freedom of heart, freedom by wisdom, ego, possessiveness, tendency to conceit, all no more. And the Buddha said, yes, of course it is possible. And this is what the Heart Sutra is trying to teach you in 260 words. And then you can attain that, and you will realize this is peaceful, this is sublime, this is the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all attachment, the ending of craving. 远离颠倒梦想，就近涅槃. Ajahn Chah says, do not try to become anything. Do not make yourself into anything. Do not even call yourself a meditator. Do not even try to become enlightened. Just get rid of your greed, hatred, and ignorance. The end point is enlightenment. When you sit, just sit. When you walk, just walk. Grasp at nothing. Resist nothing. This is exactly what the Heart Sutra is trying to teach you, summarized in 260 words. Now, the sutra teaches that all Buddhas of the past, present, and future live aiming for perfect wisdom and attain perfect enlightenment. The Dhamma is the boat for us to cross from ignorance to happiness, to awakening, cross from suffering to happiness. The Dhamma has to be used. The Dhamma is not to be praised, locked up in a center, and worshipped. The Dhamma has to be used. So now the very last part of the Heart Sutra teaches you the last step, that you need to go beyond all concepts. Form we talked about, emptiness we talked about. These are strategic understandings which I have already described in great detail. You got to master it, you got to understand it, because only then will you achieve boundlessness, 自在. Self, non-self. Plurality, singularity. These are all processes which you need to know because you need it for function. Emptiness, as I said, is a tool. You use it. It's not a wheel. Emptiness, if you grasp it wrongly, is like picking up a poisonous snake by the wrong end. So make sure you do not wrongly understand this teaching. Now, in this sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.15, the Buddha was talking to Kachana. And Kachana was asking about non-existence and existence. And the Buddha said that the one with right view, you do not cling to either this nor this. To say non-existence is wrong. That is nihilism. To say complete eternal existence or eternalism, that is also wrong, the Buddha said. And in turn, the Buddha taught that Dhamma by the middle. This is dependent origination. All does not exist. This is the second extreme. All exist. This is one extreme. Instead, we exist because of cause and condition and effect. You are a temporary state because of a cause, condition, and you will change because these are all impermanent. Anatta, or not self, is a very important teaching. In fact, understanding this is the door to awakening. So we think of a unitary, seamless being, but in reality, we are activities in motion, not an independent entity. But it is a myth. Some Buddhists wrongly think that anatta is no self. This is incorrect. You exist. at any time as a temporary composite of energy. It is not that you do not exist. You exist as a temporary composite of energy, like a snapshot of this raging river. When you understand this non or not self-teaching, you will be free from suffering. Like water, you move with wisdom. With the Dhamma, you flow like water around rocks. When you understand form, emptiness, self, non-self, when you understand all this fully, you flow like water around rocks. You move in the path of least resistance with a change in your attitude and behavior. And you can be very happy. That's why traditionally the Zen masters seem a bit mad to the unenlightened people, but they are deliciously happy because they understand, they know reality. Dhamma in Chinese, Fa. On the left side, San Dian Sui. On the right side, Chu Qi. Water going out. When you understand the nature of things, when you apply the Dhamma, you will flow like water around obstacles, hence lessening your distress. Now, I love this. Enlightenment or awakening is absolute cooperation with the inevitable, because it defines enlightenment or awakening not just as a realization, but as an activity. Enlightenment is when everything within you is in cooperation with the flow of life itself, with the inevitable. Now you know how to flow like water around rocks. Now, Ajahn Chah gave this very beautiful teaching. One day, someone asked, how can you be happy in a world of such impermanence? The first of the three universal characteristics. The master held up a glass and said, someone gave me this glass, and I really like it. Holds water, bright, beautiful, etc. One day the wind may blow it, one day I might knock it, and then it will break. Of course, when I understand that the glass is already broken, every moment with it is precious. This is a man who truly understands emptiness. This is a man who truly understands the three universal characteristics. But this is not a man who is depressed and saying, oh, you're say, impermanent or dukkha, or, but he is flowing like water around rocks. He understands it and he knows how to make use of it. The cup is already broken. Make full use of it now. All of us are going to grow old, sick, have some form of terrible disease, and finally die. But you can still live your life very, very well. And among this very audience itself, I see Dhamma brothers who are very, very seriously sick at one point, almost literally, technically dead. Yet they survive, and since then they have lived life well. They have understood impermanence. Yeah, it's impermanent. Anytime he can go. But that doesn't mean he just sit there and moan, oh, impermanence, impermanence, impermanence. Instead, he has now lived life even fuller, better, more meaningfully. So attachment to sensual pleasure, Brother Quack, will cause suffering. But so does aversion to it. Do not swing to either extreme. Use the middle path. Remember, in the first noble truth, the Buddha identified suffering with the 5 clinging aggregates. But the aggregates themselves are not suffering. What you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch, what you think themselves is not suffering. It is only suffering when you cling to it. It is only suffering when you refuse to let it go. So when you keep on clinging to unreliable, unstable things as your means of finding happiness, then you're going to be very, very unhappy. Whoop, let go. The reality of the world is a flower will fall, even though you might love it. A weed will grow, even though you do not love it. It just is. This is reality, whether you like it or not. So we live with it to the best of our ability. And the difference between a flower and a weed is just a judgment. So contemplative insight is very important. The Heart Sutra, for every one of you here who is reading it, if you find it confusing, very good, because it wants you to make your mind understand, unravel What is it in there that makes it so confusing? It forces you to understand what is Wu. It forces you to understand what is Kong. And to understand it right at the very beginning, the sutra tells you, you must perceive your own mind, everything clearly. Right mindfulness. Right mindfulness in Chinese is 正念. Notice this word. The top, 静. The bottom, 心. 心 doesn't mean heart. 心 means your mind. Observe your present mind. Remember? 观自在. Observe your present mind. A nice t-shirt, always come back, observe what are your thoughts, feelings, wholesome, unwholesome, how do they come and go? Come back to your senses. Don't function in automatic gear all the time. Now, the last line talks about mantra. A mantra is a collection of words that we keep in mind. To the unknowledgeable, he thinks it's for protection. He thinks it's magic, that if I chant this, it will protect me. To the awakened, to the enlightened, the only magic is when you understand that meaning, that Dhamma, and you live according to it, then that Dhamma will protect you, not the word. Therefore, if you look, 故知般若波罗蜜多咒，故知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒. It doesn't say the last line. It says the entire Prajna Paramita. Therefore, know that the Prajna Paramita is the great mantra. What you should keep in mind. The word mantra means something you keep in mind. The wisdom mantra, the answer plus mantra, the supreme mantra. No magic. Everything here refers to what is going to help you. And every time you chant it, you are reminded of the heart of the Buddha's teaching. Now, the Xin Jing has become like a Swiss knife in the Buddha Dharma. People give birth, chant Xin Jing. People die funeral, chant Xin Jing. Wedding, chant Xin Jing. Welcome somebody, chant Xin Jing. Because it's like a Swiss knife. Basically, it just summarizes the Buddha Dharma in 260 words, Chinese characters. So the mantra is not the line at the end. When I talk about the mantra, everybody thinks gate gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha, and you see movies that makes it even worse. All right? The mantra is the entire text of 260 characters. The mantra at the last line, the gate gate, paragate, parasam gate, is the final puzzle, the final jigsaw for you to solve, to be enlightened. As I said, the early translations of the Heart Sutra were titled Prajna Paramita Dharani, 不是静, but 咒. When successfully applied, you will have perfect wisdom. This was one of the questions I asked in the questions that I sent to you. What's the difference between a dharani and a mantra? Well, basically, to summarize, a dharani is a mnemonic device. It's meant to help you remember things. A mantra usually has words which have no meaning, like gate gate. You cannot understand it. So this is the last line. Gate gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha. So my wife tries to pronounce this in Chinese. I tell her, forget it. There's no point because there is no meaning in Chinese. It is a transliteration of the Sanskrit. So you have jeti, poro, jeti, which has absolutely no meaning. It's just a sound. In Sanskrit, this means gone, gone, paragate, gone beyond, parasamgate, gone altogether beyond, bodhi, awakening, swaha, or hail. So what is this last line trying to teach? This last line, brothers and sisters, is extremely important. If you understand this last line, you understand the entire teaching that we had just spent so much time discussing. The first gate, gone. Remember the very first part of the sutra? If you look at your notes, the very first part, the first gate, have you the realization to go beyond the emptiness of the self? The very first part, body, feeling, perception, mental formation, consciousness, your rupa nama, your 5 aggregate. The first one challenges you. Have you gone or understood the emptiness of the self? You do not grasp onto this self. You are a temporary gathering of conditions. You exist, but what we are attached to is this illusion of a permanent self, a permanent atta. And this first gate teaches us, let's break through this. Let's cut through this delusion. Let's hammer this to pieces. Then the second gate, have you the realization to go beyond the emptiness of all phenomena? Again, if you look at your notes, in the second, you will see the emptiness of all phenomena. 6 sense organs, 6 sense objects, 6 consciousness, the 18 dhatus. You must develop the realization to go beyond this. Everything that we see, hear, touch, smell, taste, everything, nothing has an independent existence. They're always changing. This cuts through the illusion that there is anything reliable, stable, that you can cling on for comfort and happiness. Who do not grasp onto phenomena as perceived by your 18 dhatus. Paragate, gone beyond. Have you the realization to gone beyond the emptiness of concepts? I also spent quite a lot of time just now explaining about concepts. All right? The emptiness of concepts. When you truly understand emptiness, you will rise above duality. The chains of our grasping and attainment, even to concepts, even to gain wisdom, attainment, I this, I that, I built this, I am great. All those concepts must be not attached to anymore. The Buddha said, even to Dhamma, you have to let go, let alone a Dhamma. When you understand that the Dhamma is like a raft and that you should let go even of positive things, Dhamma, then how much more so should you let go of negative things? And the late Ajahn Buddha Dasa, he used to teach this line, Sabbe Dhamma nalam abhinivesaya. All phenomena should not be clung to as I, my, or mine. He said this is the summary of the Buddha's entire teaching. You will not find this line as it is verbatim in the Pali Canon because Ajahn Buddha Dasa actually paraphrased it. But Sabbe Dhamma Nalam Abhinivesaya, Ajahn Buddha Dasa taught, is the very core of the Buddha Dhamma, the very summary of the Buddha Dhamma. In English, of course, it means all phenomena should not be clung to as I, my, or mine, including concepts, including attainments, including wisdom. Then parasamgate, which means gone altogether beyond, bodhi swaha. So the message of the Heart Sutra is not emptiness. Emptiness is just one aspect, but going beyond the concepts of self, form, and emptiness. Disengaging selfishness, cravings, conceit, conceptual prisons to be liberated. 自在. Enlightenment or awakening is to the truth, so that you can be unbounded, going altogether beyond, freed from divine and human bondages. And this is what in Pali called Sama Vimutti, right liberation. So by now you understand the last line, Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Swaha. These 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 words summarizes all that is preceding it and testing you whether you have actually achieved this, 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 and this. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm ending now. When you are deluded, a rose is an entity, a solid entity. And you laugh and say, how can a rose be a solid entity? 3 days it will be there. But we will look at it as an entity. And that is plurality. We see things as separate. Now, when you start to learn the Dhamma, you realize that a rose is now not a rose. but a composite of many non-rose elements. You need water, you need soil, you need sun, you need fertilizer, singularity. Everything contributes to it. Now, finally, when you go and have clear understanding into these self, non-self, emptiness, etc., now you have insight into reality. A rose is now an impermanent rose, whose beauty is to be seen and happily enjoyed, while it lasts in its empty, ephemeral, non-self state. You function with plurality amidst your understanding of singularity. So transcendental wisdom is your capacity to be fully present to the reality of things. It is transcendental because it rises above noise and delusion of daily life, so that the reality of life, the beauty of life, despite its emptiness, despite its impermanence, the connectiveness of life is seen clearly and you can still live happily. Knowing emptiness, you will no longer be centered on the I, because this is just an empty concept. Our emotions of craving, ill will, and conceit are stilled. Now you can truly live mindfully in the present moment with the pureness of a selfless being, a selfless mind. Now you can really do what is called metta karuna, mudita, upekkha. So doing good to gain merits is founded on still a desire for merits, lobha, not on the premise of metta, on universal benevolence. Do good for goodness sake, not for merit's sake. Take the self out of your action until you reach a stage when you can realize that there is non-self. For the time being, take the self out of your action, and it will always be good actions. Knowing the ephemeral nature of all things, do not depend on them for your happiness. You know you can't. All the perceived phenomena, from your stereo set to your computer to your car, are anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are empty. Now, Brother Joseph stated, after the lesson on Heart Sutra by Dr. Wong, my head will be full of kong, kong, kong. Brother Key also said the same thing. No, that is wrong. If you walk out of this 2 hours sharing with this concept, I would have failed. Instead, if there is one thing that you would walk out with, your head should be full of, Master, what have you learned from Chan after all these years? The Master replied, Wu. That's why you will often seen in Chan stories, a student asking the Master complicated questions, etc. And the Master replied with a shout, Wu. Now I hope you understand. All phenomena should not be clung to as I, my, or mine. Sabe dhammam nalam abhinivesaya. This is Wu. Now, an unawakened mind cannot express the thoughts of an awakened mind. He can only at best present his incomplete view using language as the medium, hopefully without critical errors. If I have given errors, I apologize. Teachings point towards the truth that needs to be self-realized, as language inadequately express the insights of an awakened mind. Do not mistaken the finger for the moon. What I want you to see is the moon, not my finger. This sharing on the Heart Sutra began with a short history of Xuanzang. The Heart Sutra, as we have today, was edited by him with the corrections to the top and the end. The middle part is almost an exact replicate of part of Kumarajiva's voluminous Prajna Paramita corpus. And of course, Xuanzang, as I told you, brought back lots of material. This is one of the scripts that he brought back that is in existence. I had the great privilege of seeing this in a trip organized by Dato Sri Victor. This is Xuanzang's grave. His two chief disciples is Hui Zhi and a Korean monk called Won Chok. Don't know how to pronounce this, but these were his two chief disciples. All right, and they are buried besides him. This is near to Xi'an, also on a trip with Dato Sri. We were also very blessed that the venerables at this same place so honored us by actually showing us this, which apparently is not usually shown to tourists, but I think because of the monks that were with us, they actually allowed us in and showed us the relics of Xuanzang. Now, the bodily relics of Xuanzang are scattered all over the world. During the Second World War, for example, Japanese soldiers brought back part of his skull to Japan, and another part of his skull is in India. One of the classes I attended was at Kaohsiung at Fo-Guangshan on the Heart Sutra, and you will at one glance easily realize that I was the oldest student in the entire class, to the horror of my classmate sitting beside me. When this old man walked in, I think she expected him to walk to the front and teach. So by me sitting down there, it shocked her to her core. Xuanzang translated a total of 1,335 volumes of Sanskrit sutras into Chinese. That is amazing, and he's considered one of the great translators. But his biggest contribution was not a translation. His biggest contribution was actually his editing of the Heart Sutra. Now, with that, I would like to end, and I thank Sister Siu Yin, who helped me a lot with understanding the Chinese characters and with pinyin. All right, and thank you so much to her. I thank many teachers over the 25 years I've studied the Heart Sutra. I especially acknowledge the late Bhante Punaji, who opened my eyes to many concepts which are buried by mistranslations. Any misinterpretation is entirely my own lack of understanding. I have given, along with the notes, a lot of footnotes, which you can read yourself. These footnotes help me understand what I shared with you better. And I will upload this. This version that I used tonight is slightly different from the one I gave Sister Su Chuan by just 2 slides or so that I added in the very last minute. But I can give this to Su Chuan, and Bobby perhaps can upload it to the BGF site as a separate site whereby they can download it. With that, I would like to end. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for giving me 2 hours of your time. Thank you. And I hope that you had benefited from my sharing of the Heart Sutra. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong.
Thank you, Dr. Wong.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wong.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wong. But before we end, actually, I want to say whether we should thank Dr. Wong or not, because Dr. Wong is different at the start of the session. Dr. Wong is not Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong is not the same Dr. Wong at the start of the session. So anyway, there are I think we can do with 2 questions. Right, so there are 2 questions here. So maybe Dr. Wong. This one. This one question from Real.
Christmas.
Everything is devoid of self when one dies. It is just that the physical body stops working and the 5 khandhas stop working. So why should one be concerned with rebirth? There is no self to be reborn.
This same question has been asked so many times. I'm wondering whether it's the same person who is asking the question. But this question has been asked many times, and there's going to be a breaking myth talk on this sometime in the future. I don't know when, but there's a breaking myth talk. You know, people have this concept. You have first one extreme. The extreme being the concept of the atta, which the Buddha says is wrong. And that means there's something permanent, which is unchanging. It's going to be there forever. And it's going to move from this body to this body to this body to this body to that body. Transmigration. The Buddha said that's completely wrong. Okay, so there's no permanent structure which actually goes from body A to body B to body C ad infinitum. The Buddha said that is wrong because when you look, there is no experiential evidence There's no evidence for that. In fact, the Buddha says it's a foolish idea for people to promise other people that, oh, you're going to live in an eternal heaven or you're going to rot in an eternal hell. The Buddha said that's foolish. What the Buddha taught, you can actually easily Google it. Google Venerable Sati, Google consciousness, and then you will have a whole beautiful sutta, which I will share in one of the Breaking Myths series that is going to come on what actually happens. Thank goodness we have modern terms, because the word rebirth is also not very accurate, because rebirth itself implies that something is going to be born. What the Buddha taught is that it is not even your consciousness, because Venerable Sati had the wrong impression that consciousness is something concrete, and that this consciousness goes from life to life to life at death. And the Buddha said, no, consciousness does not exist as a separate entity. Consciousness can only arise when there is something to be conscious of. So it is a process that goes on. And I have found the example of using Lego blocks a very good way of trying to share my understanding. The candle at the first watch of the night is different from the candle in the second watch and different from the candle at the third. They're actually different parts of the candle, but they are related to each other. So for us, a very simplistic understanding is that if I'm a very good person and I die, all right, this identity that is me is going to be gone. This Lego block that is me is going to be removed, disintegrated, and put into the bin. But because of the things that I have done, that bin containing my Lego blocks are reassembled, or in modern words, recycled into another bin. That's the vipaka of this karma that I have planted. This house that I will build, this house that I will build is dependent on the karmic acts that I have done. So that entity is not the same as the past entity, but it's not completely different too, because that entity arose from this entity. Let's take a look at a very extreme example. Say I'm a very, very good person, a saint. And after I die, this human being called Dr. Wong has died. And it has become a Dewa somewhere. Now that Dewa is a Dewa. That Dewa is not Dr. Wong, but that Dewa came to be because of Dr. Wong. Now, Dr. Wong is a horrible man. He is one of those Hitler-era people experimenting on the poor Jews, one of those Japanese in Manchuria. So when he dies, he be so bad that he became a dog. But a dog is a dog. A human is a human. A dog is not a human. But that dog came to be because of this human. So as I said, the Lego block concept is probably an easier way for us to understand. So one may say, let the dog suffer lah, after all, I know more already. But you must not forget that that dog that suffers arises because of this. You are recycled into another form. So while it is not the same, it is something which come about because of something else. Now, if you look at it at the microscopic level, which is what Ajahn Buddhadasa like to do. Ajahn Buddhadasa, if you read his books, he will tell you, don't even think about this life to the next life. All that is for people's imagination. Think of it within this life. The Dr. Wong at the beginning of this talk and the Dr. Wong at the end of this talk 2 hours later is already two different persons. If Sister Li Ming had been a very good student paying attention to what I shared, Sister Li Ming at the end of these 2 hours is a different Sister Li Ming from the Sister Li Ming 2 hours ago. So can the Sister Li Ming 2 hours ago say, I can't be bothered with the Sister Li Ming 2 days from now. That's her word. Why should I bother? But you must not forget that Sister Li Ming now will become the Sister Li Ming 2 days from now, 2 years from now, 2 decades from now. All right, so I hope I've answered that question. It's not an easy topic. Even a venerable called Venerable Sati living during the Buddha's time was confused. So you can well understand why it is not an easy topic for us to understand. Okay, Joseph?